Try to write exclamation mark Rubet in chat. Exclamation mark Rubet in chat. See if it works. Fuck, Stream Elements is broken. Stream Elements is broken today. What is this? We can watch that as a last part of stream quote. But we can still... Okay, how can we do giveaways? Wait. Okay, I have a new page here. I'm just setting it up. Winners 2. Channel include. Not there. That. Try to type exclamation mark Rubet. Try exclamation mark Rubet. Yes, it works. Exclamation mark Rubet, boys. If you want to join the giveaway, if you have an account, then just join the giveaway. If you don't have an account, make one. Scroll down to the panel, click the Rubet banner, or press the link that is spammed in chat, okay? Everyone can join in, but you need to have a username for your winnings, okay? Available in your region. Oh. Exclamation mark Rubet in chat to join. Chat has been... Watch for... Click stop watching the chat to get the result, okay? Exclamation mark Rubet to join in. We have a promo code as well. This is today's promo code. Here you go. It has everyone that wants to joined in. Exclamation mark Rubet to join in. I will press stop. Okay, stop giveaway. RMR93. And this guy, what is this? Copied. That's sick. Can you paste your Rubet username? Can you paste your Rubet username? Don't only write that sick. Can you paste your Rubet username? RMR as well. Before they're untimed out. Okay, do you got it there? I need yours as well. Demetrios. Demetrios, can you type your Rubet username before the spammers are coming back? Be fast! Be fucking fast. No! Okay, we got both of them. We got them. No, you can spam all you want. That's fine. RMR 93. RMR has won. Fucking look at this chat. Ah, good one, boys. Yes, we can watch that video. What was his name? Why I'm against anti-doping. Video 2. I know how to silence. You saved it for... Yes, I did. Watch later.
The debate.
Assholes in chat. This is why. Best community on Twitch? Yes, you're right. I can have some points for saving, like the redeems. Godfrey, yes. But no, Stream Elements is fucked up right now, so I can't give points. We watched part 1 of this video earlier, a few days ago. I want to watch part 2. I want to watch part 2. Let's listen.
So my video definitely spawned a huge debate on whether anti-doping should exist. I don't think people realize just how complex this discussion can get. Like 5 years ago, the debate was simplistic and most arguments made by both sides were pretty bad. After I posted my video though, I read a lot of good arguments, something I'd never really seen before. So
I
in
might
this
have
video,
to remind
I'm
me,
mainly
Godfrey.
just gonna go over the video made by Seb from Whalething House. I'll also go over arguments I found online that differ from his. But before I get into the video, I'd just like to
it's
address
calm and
the
nice
most
voice.
common criticism on my video. A lot of people were mentioning how I described America as a mostly drug-free country. It was kind of my fault because I didn't say that I was only talking about Olympic lifting. This kind of reminded me of Zach's video, so check out his video because I mostly agree with him. So I won't waste any more time. I'll just get straight into Seb's video.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 4 main points that Clarence puts forward that fit essentially under this umbrella that anti-doping is unethical. And I'm going to talk about them and I'm going to show where we delineate logically. These 4 points are: 1, that
you
it
have
creates
99 plus timeout, 2 bans.
2, it facilitates corruption.
I can't see the number.
3, it demonizes PEDs. And 4, it forces athletes to use dangerous compounds. 1, it creates an unlevel playing field. I don't feel like Clarence is putting forward a truly convincing argument that the playing field would be level in a non-tested federation. It's almost this utopian idea that with no restraints, everything will suddenly become fair. But it seems to me that in the situations where drugs in sports are legal, then the countries that invest the most in developing better PEDs will have a significant advantage.
Yeah, he said
and
so
that
as
the
well.
playing field will only become more unlevel.
The problem with this argument is that it's describing the current reality. Like, what's stopping countries from...
What the other guy said was wrong, because the drugs that works best are cheap, and they won't be able to develop any new drugs that is better than the ones that already is there. Might be some, but in most cases, that argument is wrong. And the drugs that are out there, the countries that are putting most into developing new drugs are developing new drugs that won't be caught on drug tests. So he's actually arguing against himself for what he's saying here.
Investing in better PEDs right now. It has happened in the past as well. The example being the Balco scandal, which happened with anti-doping in place. Like, systematic doping is state-funded. The countries that invest the most into it are going to benefit the most. East Germany and Russia invested a lot into their doping program, and other countries are most likely investing in their doping programs right now to create new and more powerful PEDs. Drugs being banned from sports doesn't stop this. There would also be a massive incentive for a country to synthesize a designer steroid or a new PED, because it would be completely unknown by WADA, so they won't even be able to test for it. This would give the country a huge advantage, perhaps a bigger advantage compared to if anti-doping didn't exist. Also, Balco was completely unregulated. There were no clinical trials and absolutely no safety testing. So in the drug development process, there's a lot of regulations in place to improve safety. Like, you probably heard a lot about that in the news recently. So if PEDs were legal, they would also be subject to the same regulations, at least in an ideal world. I think Seb could have made a better argument here. I think a better question to ask is, the countries that invest the most money into doping will have an advantage. What would be a more fair situation? A world with anti-doping or a world without anti-doping? So we'll define fair as meaning a more level playing field. And keep in mind, this question is not asking about what causes more overall harm. I'll address that later. I think it's best to answer a single question at a time. I believe I answered that question in my video, but I'll briefly go over it again. Athletes will be free to use PEDs, unlike right now, where only some athletes can get away with it. Of course, there's a lot more nuance. People will make a counter-argument saying athletes, countries that invest the most money into doping will take the best PEDs, while poor athletes, countries, won't be able to take the best PEDs. I can't fully agree with this argument because it assumes the best PEDs will be highly inaccessible and expensive without explaining why, and it fails to answer why the no anti-doping option is less fair. People have the belief that the efficacy of a drug is correlated with its price. Looking at current PEDs, this isn't the case. In fact, you can even argue it's the opposite. HGH is
This is the most expensive drug there is. Growth hormones. It's the absolute most expensive. If you took this alone, you wouldn't perform that much better. A little bit maybe, but not that much. Testosterone, cheap AF. Way more performance.
extremely expensive and hard to access, yet it's not a very powerful PED. A weightlifter taking a moderate dose cycle of test and tren would have an advantage over a weightlifter taking low dose HGH and test. And like I mentioned in my last video, there's a point of diminishing returns that's far lower for a weightlifter and track and field athlete compared to a high level bodybuilder. So an expensive cycle of 2 grams of anabolics with HGH would actually lower the performance of the athlete. So more money put into PEDs would actually reduce performance. Currently, an athlete can buy a 5-year supply of
Big Daddy Juicer. Big Daddy Juicer. No, Big Juice Daddy. That's his name is Boston Lloyd. He's famous for trying out the most insane stuff.
performance. Currently, an athlete can buy a 5-year supply of reasonable PEDs for the price of an Alico bar. People who couldn't afford them wouldn't even be able to buy sports equipment anyway. Also, since I'm for legalizing anabolics, like a lot of people are, you could argue the price of PEDs would go down.
Yes,
My
this is
argument
Clarence
that
Kennedy.
almost everyone would still have access to PEDs, and this is true in the current reality. There are bodybuilders all around the world taking PEDs right now, despite the differences in legality. The funny thing is, I can think of an argument against my position, but then I could also think about an argument against the argument. But unfortunately, this video would be way too long. And like I said, this is a very, very long discussion.
Knowing then that that is what's going to be required to reach the elite levels in the sport, which teenager is going to join weightlifting? Whose parents are going to drive their kids to the gym, knowing that essentially the conclusion to them being a talented athlete is that they're going to have to take an enormous amount of gear?
They already need to do that. That's the thing.
Essentially, a requirement to take drugs to compete would pressure athletes to take drugs when they don't want to.
Again, this is describing the current situation. For a kid to compete at the highest level in the current reality, they'll eventually have to use drugs. I also think this is worsened by the propaganda from WADA. A lot of talented kids believe they can become an Olympic champion. They're fooled into believing that and only realize later on that the sport is pretty much full of drugs.
Also, as we know, humans, through their differences in physiology and endocrinology, respond differently to exogenous hormones.
People also metabolize and excrete hormones differently. You could argue in the current system that a person that lacks 2 copies of the UGT2B17 gene has good genetics because their genetics allows them to get away with taking more testosterone. It's really how you define good genetics. I would consider a person that responds better to PEDs as having great genetics.
Drugs in some ways make this romantic idea about sports fade even more. The moment that there is a PED free-for-all, the more the training and genetic advantages
It's not
that
orange
we're born
juice.
with begin to sort of skew slightly more unfairly.
I think competitive sports will become more and more about drug use regardless. Progression in science and technology without the intent to improve human performance will probably find its way into sports. Like this happened with anabolics, where the main purpose of them was for breast cancer.
So my question is, if someone has low test and they take test to get a normal level, then it is really bad? May come find out. Maybe come find. So my question is, if someone has low test and they take test to get a normal to a normal level, then is it really bad? I don't think so. Is it bad at all?
Muscle wasting disease.
But what he said, the genetics of some people, they have set a standard. Look here, paint. Testosterone T divided by this is how much testosterone you secrete out in your urine. Epitestosterone. So they have made you secrete epitestosterone and testosterone into your urine. Some people secrete 0.1 testosterone to 1 epitestosterone into their urine. And this is measured. So equals 0.1. Isn't it supposed to be 1-to-1? That's about... No, Godfrey. The thing is, that's genetics. This is genetics of some people, while others, as you are, as 1-to-1. The ratio that is allowed to have on a doping test is 4-to-1. This guy, the guy that has this gene, over the guy that has this gene, can take a lot more testosterone before he reaches 4-to-1 without getting caught on a drug test. Do you see? They might have the same testosterone levels in their blood, but the one guy secretes 10 times more. That's what it explains, yes, correct. So the guy with this gene, he can take 10 times more testosterone than this guy and still get away with it on a drug test. Is that fair? No.
Diseases and other medical conditions. It's also happening with peptides and serums, and eventually CRISPR. The point is that PEDs will be created without direct funding for PED research. It might happen at a faster rate with direct funding for PEDs, but eventually I think competitive sports will become more and more about technology rather than talent and hard work. But this is definitely a topic for another video.
Clarence's second point is that it facilitates corruption. But there are other ways to be corrupt. Removing anti-doping wouldn't remove corruption from how people tend to act and respond in these kinds of situations. To my mind, this is just wishful thinking. There are plenty of other ways in weightlifting through which money can be transferred and pass hands under the table. Just like paying an official to change someone's body weight when they go to compete.
I do believe there are other ways corruption can manifest. Seb gave the example of an official being brought.
I agree with you that having better genetics is fair. I 100% agree with you. But some genetics makes it easier for someone to cheat. That was the point. Because they had the same genetics if they both were natural. Or they could have had the same genetics for being natural. But the one guy could cheat 10 times more without being caught on a drug test. That was the point.
Bribed to lie about someone's body weight. But why wouldn't countries take advantage of this right now? There's even an example of a weightlifter who was threatened to be assassinated. This happened in the current system, and it would happen without anti-doping. Countries take advantage of anti-doping because it's the easiest tool to use to manipulate who wins and who loses. If it was removed, I think it would get rid of the biggest driver of corruption in weightlifting, because it's what countries take advantage of right now. Of course, you can argue that other forms of corruption would happen to a much greater degree if anti-doping didn't exist, but you'd need to elaborate on that and explain why that would be the case. If anti-doping worked 100% of the time, I would actually be all for it. I just don't think anti-doping should exist because of the problems it creates.
Now, the crux of this argument to me sounds like a false dichotomy.
To be honest, I think my statement at the beginning wasn't even what I believe anyway, because my arguments in the video against anti-doping wasn't just about its efficacy. So I definitely made an error in my video, and I shouldn't have put it like I did in the beginning. So this is fair criticism. I don't know what percentage of efficacy I would support anti-doping, because it's not the only thing that matters. I don't support anti-doping for multiple other reasons, like I explained in my video, such as the propaganda and dishonesty, how it's halting research into PEDs, how it targets people unequally, how it demonizes PEDs. It also depends on the history of anti-doping. I consider the past 50 years of anti-doping to be a failure. If the war on drugs suddenly became incredibly effective, I don't think people would say it was a good thing. There's also more reasons, so it's definitely not just about the efficacy. Do you really believe drug testing in every country in the world is equal?
So I don't actually think that Clarence is wrong about this. But what about the problems that are created by not testing? In what is commonly referred to as Goldman's dilemma, Robert Goldman polled world-class athletes and he asked them, would you take a pill that would guarantee you a gold medal even if you knew that it would kill you in 5 years? And more than half of the athletes said that they would do it. So the population of athletes that we're talking about when we speak about anti-doping are an extremely intense-minded group of people. Their desire to win and do whatever it takes is just off the charts.
And that's why they already do this.
Seb mentions Goldman's dilemma, but I think my previous criticism...
This is
was
shockingly
that
well edited,
countries
yes.
are able to, right now, under the current system, create the 5-year debt compound. In fact, you could argue that it's more likely because of lack of regulation. Like, Balco could have created a compound that would have killed athletes in 5 years.
The current drug testing at least places some kind of limit on how many or how much PEDs can be taken. But if we remove testing, more will be taken, and this is made clear by the fact that in weightlifting performance, other than for Lasha Talakadze, performance is significantly lower now than it was in the 80s.
What he's saying here is fake news as well, because more isn't better all the time. So that is also fake news.
Where testing was even more lenient.
He also mentions weightlifters in the 80s lifting more than current weightlifters. That is true for sure, but I don't think it's fair to say that was definitely because of less drug testing. It may be the case that weightlifters trained much harder back then and the standard was way higher, and I would argue that was the case. Also, there are weightlifters right now who are never getting drug tested, so why aren't they beating lifters from the 80s? But to be fair, that's not even addressing his main argument.
The testing that we do have at the very least provides a limit to the individual quantity taken.
I can respond to that argument by saying athletes are using urine substitution and they're avoiding tests entirely, so there's no limit for those athletes. But I think what he meant to say was drug testing reduces the number of athletes using PEDs, and it can reduce the amount of PEDs a person can take, or it stops more kids from using PEDs. I would agree with that. There's no data, of course, but I would still say that is most likely correct, that it does reduce the number of athletes and kids using PEDs in sport. However, an even better way to phrase that argument or ask that question is, does anti-doping existing reduce the overall harm done by PED use? The answer to that question I don't know, but I'll give you reasons why it could be the case and that it increases overall harm. So just because the amount of PEDs used is reduced, that doesn't mean overall harm is lowered. An analogy is that the Netherlands prioritizes harm reduction of street drugs, while Sweden has a strong emphasis on criminalization and has limited use of harm reduction. But the Netherlands has far fewer overdose deaths compared to Sweden, despite the Netherlands having a higher population. So if PEDs were legal and allowed in sports, it would allow athletes to easily get blood work, allow doctors to monitor their health, and use safer anabolics with more research done on them. This is the point I made in my last video, that anti-doping unintentionally forces athletes to use dangerous compounds if they want to win. Removing anti-doping could make more athletes use PEDs, but it may lower overall harm done. Again, I don't know the true answer to this question. No one does. There's a lot of data on the war on drugs and its problems, but there's pretty much none on this. A lot of people will say, you're just speculating, therefore you're wrong. But literally both sides of this debate requires speculating because of the lack of hard evidence. The best we can do is speculate and make arguments based on logic and existing evidence. Seb and many others speculated that it increases overall harm, and I speculate that it can increase overall harm. We both gave our reasons and logic. Also, the question of does the existence of anti-doping reduce the overall harm done by PEDs?
Never done Olympic
Completely
weightlifting,
ignores
no.
the harm from PED use outside of sports. The number of recreational PED users is far higher than the number of PED users in sports. So it doesn't matter that much if anti-doping existing reduces overall harm or if it increases overall harm. Right now, the amount of harm done by PED use outside of sports is much higher. So that's what we should care about most. We should come up with solutions to fix that problem too. It's also how you define harm. A woman might be fully aware of the virilization side effects of anabolics, but may choose to take them anyway. Her goal to become a big bodybuilder will make her happy despite the side effects. So would this really be causing more overall harm to her? Does she have a mental problem? Does someone wanting to achieve the highest level in sports have a mental problem? Again, this is a long discussion.
3.
But the current masters of the doping game is Russia. They're banned from every major competition like Olympics. It's not only Russia, it's United States, it's China, it's North Korea, it's a lot of countries. It's Norway as well. So it isn't only Russia. Russia is being looked at as the bad guys, but it's the same all over. He said specifically Korea in the last video. Yeah. He did. He painted a bit better picture of United States than they deserve, I think. Way better than they deserve. And hey, African Prince, Stream Element doesn't work today.
It demonizes PEDs. Now, a quick preface to this section. I don't believe that PEDs should be illegal for the general public. I don't think that PEDs should be demonized at all for non-competing citizens. And it's for that reason I have no problem with Clarence choosing to take them or Sally from down the road choosing to take them.
What if Sally down the road was a teenage girl into bodybuilding? Would you care about the harm she could do to herself by taking PEDs? Would you care about all the teenage bodybuilders that decide to take PEDs? Why is it that you would only care about athletes that are in sport and not outside
Because he thinks you should be free to choose yourself.
sport? Obviously, I think Seb would care about Sally down the road. I just don't think he has thought of that. And I think his arguments would be stronger if he was against legalizing PEDs. If someone isn't willing to sacrifice their health, they simply shouldn't participate.
Now, to my mind, there is a huge difference between sacrificing your own health through the side effects of competing in the sport, wearing your body and mind down through the extreme training is a cost that you just have to pay. But the cost to your body through PED use, to me, isn't something that you should have to pay.
Okay, so that argument seems to me a bit silly. Because if you want to be the best, you should be able to take the side effects, the injuries fucking up your body from doing the sport, but you shouldn't be from taking a PED. What's the difference? I can't see why you should be able to take one or not the other.
Athletes' bodies already suffer an enormous amount through the rigorous training they do. And that's good. That's how it should be. That's commitment in sport. But saying that if you aren't willing to sacrifice your health beyond training through PEDs, then you shouldn't be trying to participate just doesn't sit right with me.
Side
I
effects
made
from
that
even being at
statement
this.
for the current situation in sports with anti-doping. To get to the highest level in the current system, you will have to use drugs and sacrifice your health. Seb probably meant to say athletes would have to sacrifice their health even more if anti-doping didn't exist. I'm pretty sure I addressed that point in my earlier criticism, so I won't go over it again. Recreational bodybuilding isn't drug tested, yet there are many that decide not to take drugs because they don't want to suffer side effects.
Now, this example of bodybuilding does a disservice to the argument that Clarence is putting forward to me. Making those sports a free-for-all in terms of the amount of drugs that can be used hasn't changed the public perception of them. And if anything, the public perception of bodybuilding and strongman is worse because of the rampant drug use. If people want non-drug tested weightlifting, which they clearly do based on Clarence's videos, which is fine by the way, then the good thing is that it is possible to start your own federation. But I don't think that the reduction in demonizing PEDs will be severe enough in the public opinion to grant the IOC this feeling that they can replace current...
Usain Bolt is already caught using PEDs. He was caught using something to mask over PEDs, which means he has taken PEDs. So he has, of course, yes, you can't be that fast without PEDs. Yeah, just start your own federation, because people won't go into that federation to compete and cheat to be the best. Like, that's not even a solution.
Weightlifting with free-for-all weightlifting. If bodybuilding works fine with a drug federation and a doping control federation, which, like in weightlifting, works a certain amount in that the bodybuilders who are tested aren't quite as big as the bodybuilders who aren't, then why should we remove anti-doping?
Just so you know, these guys are probably on drugs as well. Probably the same amount,
A certain amount
as
in that
the second one.
bodybuilders who are tested aren't quite as big as the bodybuilders who aren't.
It seems like all
Then
the
why
greatest,
should
yes,
we
that
remove
is true.
anti-doping from weightlifting when we can follow in their footsteps? And if people desire, just create a second federation that isn't drug tested.
I truly don't understand Seb's argument here. I also don't see how it was a counter-argument to anti-doping demonizes PEDs. Maybe he wasn't trying to attack that argument, or maybe I'm just misunderstanding it. It'd be good if he could elaborate on that.
I know that this is going to seem like an oversimplification, but it's almost as if we're saying that if we can't catch every shoplifter, and most people still have to pay full price for the products, then we should just allow everybody to shoplift.
No,
A lot
that's
of
not
people
the
have
same.
made a similar argument, such as, Clarence, if we followed your logic, we should get rid of police because we can't catch every crime. In my opinion, it's a bad analogy because it can also support my position. Let's say we have criminal activity X. Should we police it? My answer is yes if it's effective. My answer is no if it's ineffective and creates more problems. So there are three parts. One, is the criminal activity or activity unethical? And two, is having a policy in place to stop it effective or ineffective? And three, does the policy create more problems? So you can use that same line of thinking to make an analogy that's
Yeah, the thing is, he's explaining it good there. If the police makes it worse, then of course we shouldn't police it. But if they make it better, then yes.
supports my position. We can't catch everyone that uses street drugs. Therefore, we should stop the war on drugs. It's a bad premise, but the conclusion a lot of people would agree.
If the war on drugs kills more people than just letting them do whatever they want, then of course the war on drugs has to be stopped.
That's correct. So going over those three parts with anti-doping. So number one, is using PEDs bad? Number two, is anti-doping effective? And number three, does anti-doping create more problems? People just asserted my argument was that simple, which it was not. I addressed those 3 points in my last video.
4. It forces athletes to use dangerous compounds.
Oral trenbolone is one of the most dangerous steroids ever created. The only reason athletes used it was because of anti-doping. They probably wouldn't use it otherwise.
Now this is actually a really good point, but I think the most obvious rebuttal to me is that Clarence is making the assumption that with no anti-doping, every athlete will get access to the best possible PEDs.
So I think Seb made an error and meant to say safest instead of best. But let's take those two arguments. Clarence is making the assumption that with no anti-doping, every athlete will get access to the safest possible PEDs. So my short argument against that is, right now, every athlete doesn't have access to the safest possible PEDs. And it's worse because they're restricted on what they can use, which ends up being more dangerous compounds. In other words, the current reality is worse, even if in the no anti-doping reality, every athlete couldn't get access to the safest compounds. If he did mean best, then that doesn't attack my argument, but I addressed that argument earlier anyway.
But that won't happen. I mean, in some countries, the drugs themselves will still be illegal domestically and thus won't be readily available.
But that fact is true right now. His arguments would only work if athletes didn't use drugs right now. Also, this reminds me of a bad argument I made in my video. I didn't distinguish between anti-doping and the legal status of PEDs. I implied those two things existed together rather than separately. If there wasn't such a negative stigma about drug use and anti-doping just didn't exist in sports, the laws would actually be different around the world. So I'm against anti-doping and I'm for legalizing PEDs.
Start
Does
getting
that change
educational
some arguments?
credits for this.
Maybe.
Yes, be more, but Stream
Other
Elements is
substances
fucked
will
up,
be
so we
treated
can't
like
give
closely
any
guarded secrets for
points.
countries that do use them.
That happened under the current system, Balco being the example, and it's most likely happening right now. I went over that with my previous criticism.
Athletes who live in countries with better funding will do better. Again, both sides of this debate create an unlevel playing field. I don't think Clarence is fair in his idea that removing testing will make this sport fair. My feeling is that it will make things even less fair.
I never said it would make sports fair, but I argued that it would make it more fair.
I'd ask to
Seb
start
argued
over so I
that
can
it
catch
would
up,
make
but it
it
seems
even
a way
less
into.
fair. To be honest,
We're
I think
25
Seb
minutes
just
in.
repeated
I
his
can
first
send you a
argument
link if you want to
differently
see the
and
beginning
didn't
be more.
address my argument, which was anti-doping forces athletes to use more dangerous PEDs. Maybe he meant to argue no anti-doping forces athletes
Stream
to use
Elements bot is
PEDs
fucked,
that are
Sean.
more dangerous compared to if anti-doping existed. If he or someone has more points supporting that argument, it'd be interesting to hear.
I'll
In my
post the video
opinion,
in
it's
chat
quite
and then.
similar to the anti-doping reduces overall harm argument, which I already addressed.
I think another assertion made here that doesn't quite sit right with me is this idea that athletes from clean countries simply cannot compete under the current system. Given that there is a world champion from the USA and that there are an
Yes, but they're using drug in the United States as well. We have seen a lot of examples in that. What's news? I use General. For example, Lance Armstrong, that has passed every test. United States. Marion Jones, she passed a lot of tests before she got caught. Same with a lot of the other sprinters from the States. Probably same with the weightlifters from the States.
increasing number of international medalists from countries with strong anti-doping systems. It seems clear that the current system is enabling clean athletes to compete and even win sometimes, even if the
No, it's
system
not
clearly
working.
isn't perfect and it does skew heavily against them.
Michael Phelps,
This may
probably,
have been
yes.
a misunderstanding,
Guaranteed.
or I didn't say things correctly in my first video, but I don't believe that. Of course, athletes can compete clean in the current system and be successful. I would rephrase my argument to talented athletes can't compete against athletes that are equally talented and on
We
gear.
can do it in the
He
drive-through.
mentions Kate Nye
Oh,
and other athletes
I can give
most
some
likely
points.
clean, being successful. Now, most people would make the argument that
There you
they
go.
may in fact be on PEDs right now, which is a fair argument. But to make it short, I actually believe most American, German, Spanish, British weightlifters, etc. are clean because of anti-doping culture and their personalities. I guess over the years I've developed steroid x-ray eyes and I can determine who's clean. Whatever, I can talk about this for ages and make more points. But I agree with Zach's opinions and Seb's opinions. I would say Kendrick Farris was most likely clean, and I would say Kate Nye is most likely clean. But there are many points I could say about this, which I'll summarize, because I believe Seb would agree anyway. Also, I'm not discrediting anyone's achievements. In fact, I think Americans would win more medals in weightlifting if drug testing worked 100% of the time. So, number one, Kate Nye was a world champion in a non-Olympic weight class, which is less competitive. 2, drug use in women's weightlifting is most likely far lower compared to men's weightlifting due to more women wanting to avoid worse side effects from PED use. Number 3, clean.
Sagent B, I don't know anything about it because I haven't really seen that as a problem. In most federations, they haven't had to deal with that, so I don't know. In bodybuilding, it won't be a problem anyway. Did anyone see the drone? Yes, some of them did. I can try to link you the VOD as well, Beemore, if you want to.
Lifters competed at a high level in sport, but not the highest level. I don't think any clean lifter or clean track and field athlete has broken a world record. And number 4, drug testing has advanced to the point where clean athletes can be more successful.
Now, this last point is perhaps the most important point with regards to Clarence's point that athletes are forced to take drugs that are dangerous because of anti-doping protocols. So, a substance that is both safe and available to everybody would actually be legal under the current anti-doping rules.
No.
For a substance to be banned, it has to meet 2 of the following 3 criteria. 1, that it's dangerous. 2, that it provides an advantage. And 3, that it's unfair in terms of its difficulty to purchase or get hold of.
Seb's last criteria of it's unfair in terms of its difficulty to purchase doesn't match the last criteria that was put in his video, which states it violates the spirit of sport. Nowhere online can I
5 miles
find the
from
last
my
criteria
airport
he
earlier.
mentioned, but let's just accept it as true
Fines
for
for
the
flying
sake
too
of
close.
argument.
I drove
First,
away
I don't
from the
think
airport,
this
local
is a
airport.
counter-argument against my argument of athletes are forced to use more dangerous compounds because athletes are using drugs right now. WADA's criteria doesn't stop state-sponsored doping.
True, Ginger.
I don't understand how WADA's criteria
You're
can
correct.
stop athletes taking dangerous drugs right now. I don't know, maybe I'm just misrepresenting his argument, or he didn't explain it correctly.
So safe drugs, as Clarence pointed out, aren't something that can only be taken in a world without drug testing. If the drugs truly are safe, and then we make them readily available and easy for anyone to get hold of, then they would be legal substances.
I never said in a world without anti-doping that athletes can use safe drugs. I said athletes would at least have the option to use safer drugs compared to what is necessary now to win, at least. And I still don't understand how that's an argument against my position. It's like his argument assumes people are not breaking the rules right now. I could make an argument against his WADA criteria point, but I don't think his point is attacking my argument. It'd be great if Seb could elaborate on this argument, because maybe I'm missing something. So that was near the end of Seb's video. At the end, he just gave a conclusion.
I think that ultimately Clarence sees that drug testing makes things unfair. And I agree with him that the current version of drug testing, where people look the other way and money exchanges hands, goes under the table, it is unfair. But I just also think that no drug testing would also
Yeah, I
be
know,
even
Ginger.
more
We have
unfair.
seen all of them.
It seems
Have you
Seb
seen his
forgot
interview?
to include my last argument. My last point was about the WADA propaganda and dishonesty. And that's another reason why I think anti-doping is unethical. A point I haven't seen someone make is that maybe I painted anti-doping in a bad light in my video.
People
highlighting
shy,
all
it's
the corruption
emotes.
and
Look here, Beemore, do you see my screen? People shy. If you have installed Better Twitch TV, this is how it looks for us. This is People Shy. It's emotes you only can see with Better Twitch TV installed on your browser. Wide People Happy. Not even sure what that frog means. It's just to add in that you're shy
failed drug tests. But a positive way to look at that information is that it was uncovered because of the efforts of anti-doping, and that's showing it's working rather than not working. It's not completely impossible that anti-doping could stop a lot more corruption and catch a lot more people using PEDs. Could it stop it completely? No, but its efficacy can increase dramatically. It's easy to look at my video and get blown away about all the failures of anti-doping and then agree with my position without questioning my arguments. I got a lot of comments in favor of my position while they made bad arguments. Those people really just need to think about this more and realize just how complex this debate can be. Like Seb said,
Please do let me know what you think, not what Clarence thinks or what I think, down below in the comment section. What you think about this whole topic.
but yeah, that was Seb's video. I commend him for making arguments against my position. If he wants to elaborate further on some of his arguments, that would be great. Maybe I misinterpreted some of his points, or he didn't explain them like he wanted. But yeah, go check out Seb's channel. He's the only weightlifting news channel on YouTube, and he's certainly doing a great job. So I searched online for more arguments, and I just wanted to see what people were talking about after I posted my video. And a lot of people were saying how I should
I will
have
kiss his
provided a
biceps.
solution, which is
Because
a
he's a
fair
big
point,
boy.
I guess. Like one person said, criticizing a system without comparing it to the next best alternative isn't fair criticism. It ignores the benefits even a flawed system provides. But I think it's useful to point out the flaws of a system even if a solution isn't provided. At least that would help people in the future to come up with a solution. I would say criticizing the war on drugs without giving a solution is still an interesting debate to have. Saying it was a mistake and should have never happened is a useful discussion to have. My video was a series of what ifs, answering the question of what if drug testing didn't exist in the first place and how things probably would have been different. In my video, I never stated that drug testing should be removed from the Olympics right now because I believe that is almost impossible. But there are things that are possible right now that can be encouraged. So I'm just going to list these points, but I won't be elaborating on them because it can be a video itself.
Harry
So
can
number
now.
one,
I agree
anti-doping
with you.
programs and the public should stop demonizing PEDs. Number two, anti-doping and the public should be more honest about PED use in sports and explain the realities of it so people can make informed decisions. Number three, people and
This is an important point, number 2 here. Anti-doping and the public should be more honest about PED use in sport and explain the reality of it so people can make informative decisions. For example, kids going into sports, that they think they set a goal for their life to be the best, and later realizing, oh, I have to use PEDs to become the best. Why not take the decision not to try to be the best in the Olympics? So they can say, okay, sports, it isn't healthy. Maybe I should do something else in my life.
parents in particular should discourage children from high-level sports. Number four, as a society, we should stop glorifying high-level sport. Number five, create an untested federation for sports. Number six, harm reduction strategies should be implemented for PED users.
I don't have any
Number seven,
special
untested
opinions for
federations
combat
should
sports, Ginger,
discourage
but
use
I
of
agree
dangerous
with you
PEDs.
on the last
There are
part.
probably more points I can make, but like I said,
As a society, we should stop glorifying high-level sports, or just see it as it is, entertainment.
this is a whole other video on its own. So, this ended up being a very long video, and like I said, it's a huge discussion. A problem I believe is that people didn't ask the right questions or make the correct arguments when I posted the video, and I'm definitely guilty of this. I'm also learning that it's important to correctly word your arguments. I made errors in my video which don't actually represent how I feel, so I hope I did a better job in this video. Ultimately, I think this debate comes down to these questions. So number one, does the existence of anti-doping reduce the overall harm done by PED use? Number two, the countries that invest the most money into doping will have an advantage. With that in mind, what would be more fair? A world with anti-doping or a world without anti-doping? Number three, corruption exists in a world with anti-doping and without anti-doping. In what world would there be less corruption? So maybe there's some problems with those questions. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. But I think those questions are a good place to start the debate. So let me know what you think about my arguments. Do you agree or disagree? Are they flawed? It'll definitely be interesting to read the comments.
What is this? Is Norway episode 2? I think in Portugal, I think most of the stuff is not all is legal.
Ja, I dag skal vi finne ut hvorfor nordmenn verdens frieste mennesker. Hvis du vil ha fullt utbytte av denne episoden, så se gjerne episoden Hva typisk norsk først. Hvis du ikke gidder det, du vil ikke ha hele konteksten, du liker egentlig ikke kontekst. Fuck kontekst, du liker ikke å skjønne hele sammenhengen i det hele tatt, hater sammenheng, så kan jeg avsløre at det som den mest typisk norske verdien uavhengighet. Ifølge store internasjonale undersøkelser elsker nordmenn uavhengighet. Og siden vi setter da frihet, uavhengighet så høyt, har vi laget et genialt opplegg i Norge som jeg kaller en frihetsmaskin, som gjør at vi kan få mest mulig av den uavhengigheten vi så glad i. Men hva denne frihetsmaskinen, og hva det inni denne mystiske kassen, og hvorfor gjør den også fri? Det skal vi finne ut i dag. Alle mennesker står overfor et dilemma i sine liv. På
Be
den
more.
side,
You have to give points.
Ikke sant? På en annen side trenger vi ofte hjelp fra andre. Vi trenger andre hele tiden. Når vi barn, trenger vi hjelp fra andre. Se, så søt jeg var som liten. Det var så synd at jeg etter hvert ble forbyttet med et stygt barn da mor og far mistet meg. Ventet jeg opp sånn. Men senere trenger vi hjelp til å få oss en utdanning, så vi kan få en jobb, det vil si gjøre noe noen andre villige til å betale for, i tillegg til all hjelpen vi trenger fra andre hvis vi blir syke, eller andre i trøbbel.
What's the command?
Særlig menn. Hvorfor dette et dilemma? Du har kanskje hørt uttrykket «There is no such thing as a free lunch». Det finnes ikke noe sånn som en gratis lunsj. I den virkelige verden så det veldig sjelden at du får noe uten at det kreves noe tilbake. Og derfor det så ubehagelig når noen gir deg en gave, og du ikke har noen gave å gi igjen. Her fra serien The Big Bang Theory, hvor Sheldon har fått en presang av Penny.
Why would you do such a thing?
I don't know, because it's Christmas?
Oh, Penny. I know you think you're being generous, but the foundation of gift-giving is reciprocity. You haven't given me a gift. You've given me an obligation.
Ta for eksempel forholdet mellom amerikanske foreldre og deres voksne barn. Julie Andem, som laget norske Skam, måtte, da hun skulle lage amerikanske Skam, forandre på det at de norske ungdommene levde sine liv så uavhengig av foreldrene sine, fordi amerikanske foreldre i mye større grad til stede og involvert i sine barns liv. Og hvorfor de det? Det bare sånn at amerikanere mer familieorientert enn oss? Ferdig med det? Det finnes en grunn til at det sånn. Se på dette klippet her, hvor en amerikansk mor ber sin college-studerende sønn Liam ringe oftere hjem.
Hi, Liam. Hi. Do you remember me? I'm your mommy. I gave birth to you.
Elsker han.
Well, actually, I didn't quite give birth. I had to have a C-section to get you out. A big scar and hurt like hell. Like, do you ever, once in a while be like, wow, I went to, 12 years of school, and I wonder who signed those checks every year? Well, yours truly did. Mommy and Daddy.
Ikke sant? Amerikanske foreldre må bidra mye mer enn det norske foreldre må. De må betale utgifter til helseforsikring, privatundervisning for å få gode karakterer. De må hjelpe til med søking til universiteter.
Yes.
Og må ofte betale store
She's from Florida.
utgifter til bosted og mat og klær. Hvis du skal få en utdannelse, må foreldrene i snitt i USA betale over 500 000 kroner. Ofte mye mer enn det også. Og når mor og far gir så mye hjem, så har du ikke noe annet valg enn å ringe hjem.
So now I know I'm going to hear from you, especially before your mother and father have to pay the next installment for your tuition in November.
Men sånn som dette holder ikke Lånekassa på. I mailen du får fra Lånekassa, så står det bare «Lykke til med utdanningen din, vennlig hilse Lånekassen». Lånekassen kan ikke ta imot svar til denne e-postadressen. Har du spørsmål, kan du gå til lanekassen.no. De skriver ikke «Burde ikke du studere noe annet? Hva skal du egentlig med kunsthistorie? Får du en jobb da da?» Lånekassa skal på kurs neste uke. Kom gjerne innom, fint om vi kan overnatte hos deg. Hvorfor har du ikke ringt? Du ringer aldri. Mange norske mødre skulle nok gjerne hatt litt mer kontakt med sine voksne barn, men de kan ikke kreve det. I stedet nøyer de seg med de smulene de får. Mamma spilte av din snap på nytt. Mamma tok et skjermbilde. Mamma skriver fra mamma. Takk for Snapchatten, så koselig. Vi er jo selvfølgelig glade i foreldrene våre, og vi har kontakt med dem, men det Lånekassa og gratis utdanning gjør, er at vi ikke skylder foreldrene våre så mye. Så skyldfølelse og forpliktelse og dårlig samvittighet blir mindre for norske unge enn for unge i mange andre land. Og det er en ting Frihetsmaskinen gjør. Den setter oss fri fra våre foreldre. En annen ting Frihetsmaskinen gjør, er at den setter oss fri fra sjefene våre. På YouTube er det masse videoer med amerikanere som sier opp jobben på spektakulære måter. Jeg personlig er spesielt glad i denne varianten her, for han som sier opp, han er litt sånn, han er sinna, men nyansert. Se på det.
I quit. That's because you're a horrible employer. You're a good person. I appreciate everything you've ever done for me, but I quit, G. This place fucking sucks.
Det er jo sjelden man ser sånn som dette i Norge. Når vi sier opp, så gruer vi oss litt. På diskusjonsfora så skriver folk, si opp jobben, får så sykt dårlig samvittighet. Ved å si opp nå har jeg vel kostet dem en liten formue. Jeg føler meg rotten som gjør dette mot sjefen. Så hvorfor disse forskjellene mellom USA og Norge? Det handler om at sjefen i USA har mer makt over det. Han kan si det på dagen. Du er neppe med i en fagforening heller, for på mange arbeidsplasser i USA er det til og med ikke lov å være organisert i en fagforening. Og med en fagforening i ryggen får sjefen selvfølgelig mer makt over det. I USA er du også mer avhengig av jobben din, ikke bare fordi arbeidsledighetstrygden er lav, men fordi sykeforsikringen din er knyttet opp til jobben.
When you lost your job, what else did you lose?
I lost my benefits, my health insurance.
And so what has that meant for you in terms of getting health care?
I don't have it for myself or my family.
Når du er så underordnet og avhengig av sjefen din som mange amerikanere er, så blir du kanskje værende i en jobb du misliker litt for lenge, og når du endelig sier fra, så er det et stort og dramatisk valg. I quit! I Norge derimot, da har du noen allierte som ikke amerikanerne har, og som forandrer forholdet ditt til sjefen. Du har arbeidsmiljøvernlov som beskytter deg, så du ikke blir sagt opp sånn uten videre. Du er med i en fagforening som er på ditt lag. Mister du jobben og barnet ditt blir sykt,
look at the
helt
US there.
krise, for du får
Can we go back to PDs?
og gratis sykehus. Så I Norge har vi ansatte så mye makt at mange norske
We're going to
sjefer
bed. I have to go to
klager over
bed soon, Bebor. It's so late.
Men det har faktisk aldri vært tøffere å være leder.
It's
Så det
less
har vært
than
leder uten å være en sjef.
8 hours till I have
Da
to
føles ikke det å
start. I think I have to
endelig
start
si opp
stream
som et
again in like 6
dramatisk
hours.
Stort valg. Her er et klipp fra
Monka.
Sverige, som har mange av de samme ordningene som oss, hvor en fyr han er inspirert av den amerikanske måten å si på, men uten det oppdemmede aggresjonen. Se på det.
Ett kundmeddelande.
Sweden.
Efter snart 11 års deltidsarbete som serviceinriktad kassör slänger jag idag in handduken för gott. Jag vill passa på att tacka er alla kunder.
Yes, we have to be
indirekt
finished
betalat
with the
bidrag.
gym at
Jag vill även tacka
1
personal och
bits
ledning
nuts.
som fått mig att trivas och stanna kvar. Slutligen vill jag passa på att inför framtida utmaningar
1300.
önska mig själv ett stort lycka till.
Og Frihetsmaskinen setter oss altså fri fra sjefene våre.
The
og
drone test was
fra
good.
våre ektefeller. Eller for å kalle en spade for en spade, setter kvinner fri fra menn. Og alle
I'm
heterofile
good,
damer
Knive.
drømmer
I'm
om en
good.
mann som er snill, kjekk og spennende, det er flink, sjarmerende og flott kropp.
How are you?
Der datt hun. Det ble for mye av maskulin prakt og ynde.
Men når du skal velge deg en fyr å ha barn med, så må du bli realistisk. Kanskje ikke gå for den hotteste fyren. Og da legger amerikanske kvinner vekt på litt andre egenskaper ved mannen enn det norske kvinner gjør. Da blir det store spørsmålet.
So, how to get a rich guy?
I'm going to be talking about money and why it is that you should only marry a guy who has it.
How to attract rich men into your life.
Jeg setter ført til dem.
Her er forresten tipset for hvor du bør gå for å treffe rike, høykvalitetsmenn.
I encourage you to go to coffee shops that are in financial districts.
Ja. Alle amerikanske kvinner er selvfølgelig ikke opptatt av rike menn, men hvis du spør amerikanere om hvilke egenskaper de synes er viktig hos en ektefelle, svarer 71% av amerikanske kvinnene at det er veldig viktig at en mann kan forsørge familien økonomisk. Bare 25% av mennene mener det er viktig at en kvinne kan forsørge familien. Hvorfor er det sånn? Er det fordi amerikanske kvinner er mer overfladiske? Nei, det handler om praktiske hensyn. Hvis du er en amerikansk dame og har lyst på barn, vel, så koster bare fødselen rundt 100 000 kroner. Og du får ikke fødselspermisjon, du får ikke billig barnehage, du får ikke barnetrygd. Dermed trenger du en mann som kan forsørge familien. Og siden det er så få støtteordninger i USA, ender 25% av amerikanske kvinner opp som hjemmeværende mødre. Menn må kunne bring home the bacon. Så blakke menn, de kan være søte, men de ødelegger for damers gifteplaner. Bedre da, som denne bloggeren skriver, med en kjedelig mann som leverer. Jeg vil hylle de kjedelige menn. Men i Norge, hvor staten hjelper kvinner som får barn med gratis fødsel, fødselspermisjon, billig barnehage, barnetrygd, så er det selvfølgelig fint å ha en mann, men du er ikke helt avhengig av ham. Dessuten så betyr alt dette at norske kvinner kan jobbe og tjene egne penger. Bare 4% av norske mødre er hjemmeværende husmødre. Og det er disse ordningene som gjør at norske kvinner er mindre avhengig av sine menn og mer likestilte enn det amerikanske kvinner er, og som gjør at Norge kommer på andreplass på likestillingsindeksen til Verdens økonomiske forum. USA havner på 51. plass. Ok, så i Norge så har vi ordninger da som setter oss fri fra foreldre, fri fra sjefer og fri fra menn. Men det er viktig å forstå i verdenssammenheng. Sånn at vårt opplegg hvor staten hjelper oss er det vanlige, og det amerikanske opplegget hvor familien hjelper er det uvanlige. Nei, det er opplegget vårt som er uvanlig. Det vanlige er at familien hjelper. Alle som har slekt i Pakistan for eksempel, vet at når staten ikke gjør så mye for folk, da er det storfamilien, klanen, som ordner opp.
Klanen er Nav, barnehage og gamlehjem.
Men en av de store forskjellene mellom staten og klanen er at staten drives av byråkrater som ikke bryr seg noe særlig om hva de gjør. Nav kan være irriterende vanskelig å ha med å gjøre, men de sier ikke, ifølge ryktene har du ligget med mange gutter. Skam over Nav. Fra nå av får du ikke noe hjelp fra oss. Det er på tide å avduke den norske frihetsmaskinen. Og hva som er inni denne mystiske kassen som har skjult seg bak, det er staten. Med alle de ordningene som løser dette evige dilemmaet, gir oss hjelp uten å kreve noe tilbake, annet enn skatta, pluss fagforeningen som jeg tok med her. Men vent litt. Vi vet jo ikke om denne maskinen egentlig setter oss fri. Virker denne frihetsmaskinen vår? For amerikanerne og vi er jo enige om en ting. Frihet, det er bra.
Well, the bottom line is it's kind of just human nature that you don't like somebody telling you what to do.
Men uenigheten går på om sterk stat gjør folk friere eller ikke.
Here's my philosophy. The less government, the more freedom.
The bigger the government, the smaller the citizen.
Hvis du spør folk rundt i hele verden, er du fornøyd med den friheten du har til å gjøre som du vil i livet? Hvilket land har flest som er fornøyd med friheten sin? Er det land med sterk stat eller svak stat? Skal vi se. På topp kommer land med sterke stater, og så langt nede, USA med svak stat. Og på andre målinger av personlig frihet, samme mønstre. Vi banker amerikanerne. Så her tar rett og slett amerikanerne feil, og jeg synes det er helt fortvilt. For USA, dere elsker også frihet, og så har dere rotet det så veldig til. Ok, dette her kan bli litt flaut, men det er viktig at jeg gjør dette her, og jeg gjør det for å hjelpe. Dear United States of America, 250 years ago, you gave humanity a gift, the ideas of independence and freedom.
This was individual what people had answered.
And nations all around the world to fight for their self-governance. But at some point down the road, you took the wrong turn. You got stuck with this childish idea that a strong state limits your personal freedom and ended up frustrated, unhappy, and angry. Once upon a time, you were the shining city up on a hill. Now we have taken that place. It's time to swallow your pride and do as we have done. Build a powerful, strong government machine that sets you free. From your parents, from your boss, from your husband. Good luck and good night.
Okay, this video. I'm not sure what to say about the end there. Paid for by the Norwegian government, of course. It was on the paid governmental channel, as TV channel as well. Should be said. This is it 4 a.m. in Norway? It's 4:30 a.m. But boys, I think still we put together. Why do you need to stream in 6 hours? Because I did not say it to Bitsnox. We have to be finished at the gym at 1 p.m. So we have to go to the gym at 11 a.m. So it's about 6.5 hours. That's why. Is it snowing outside? Oh fuck. It's actually snow outside. The fuck, the winter should be over.
Oh, the fuck.
It's been for a while. Snow in April. Are you doing the new leg workout tomorrow? I'm not quite sure. I haven't planned out what we're doing. Mostly hamstrings. Inner thighs needs to be done. Hopefully the sun goes out in a few hours. It does. But everyone that is here, thank you for stopping by. Thank you for today's support. And I hope to see you next stream. All the next streams. Have a good night, boys. Short stream, 13 hours. That's not short. Enjoyed your stay. Thank you, Becca. Everyone, welcome back next stream and see you. Goodbye.